Alright, today I'm going to be talking about power steering in this early Bronco. So, you see that there's lines coming out of the Hydro Boost. I have the power steering pump and boxed already put into place. So what I needed to do is cut my high pressure lines and low pressure lines. And what I wanted to do was also add a cooler to the unit. So I'm going to go over how to route the lines, where exactly they go, what they're doing, and then finding the best spot for this cooler. I got the grill on so I can see where my interference would be, if any, and I found that the best spot's probably going to be right inside these ribs on the grill. So let me go ahead and test fit these lines, see what lengths I need, cut them, and we'll go from there. Okay, so on the box itself, right here is going to be my high pressure line, and this is going to be my return line. The power steering pump that I bought is the Delphi dual return, so we have two low pressure returns and then one high output down here. And then looking at the Hydro Boost itself, my two high pressure lines are going to be these rear two, and then this is going to be the low pressure. So the way I want this to work, so I need high from the back here to go into the top. Then my high output is going to go into the front location here on the box. Then my low pressure output is going to just run right back to the return. From there I have this in the low pressure. What I'm going to do is run my low pressure out down here to the cooler, and then run the cooler's cool line back into the pump. So I'm going to do a little bit of cutting and fitting, put fittings on these lines, and we'll move on. Just as a reference, these are the directions that come with the Hydro Boost unit, and that diagram is exactly how I explained my setup minus this T-fitting, because the directions say if you have a dual return pump, it flows better. So I'm taking out this and running a line to an auxiliary cooler to go back into the second line that comes off of this. So a little more color than and seeing than my interpretation that I showed out with the vehicle. Alright, we got the Hydro Boost hooked up, all the power steering lines are ran, and let's just say the first go wasn't too successful. I had fluid spewing out of this line, just like a fountain coming up. And tightened this line, I don't know how it got loose. And then started the vehicle again. It was very noisy while this pump was running, so you can't really see in there. There's no bubbles. There's a few left over, but it was foaming like crazy. So the directions say let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know if it means there's all kind of air trapped in the system, but I'm going to follow these directions here. Shut the engine off, recheck fluid level, top off as necessary, pump brake pedal a few times to purge air. If it is foamy or pump operation was noisy in prior run, allow vehicle to sit 15 to 20. Then it says start the engine and allow it to warm up to full operating temperature. So that's hoping that it's not a noisy operation. I'm going to wait 15 minutes, come back out, see where we're at. Currently working on installing the adjustable track bar. I have the bushings put in both sides, and I read a couple things on some forums about how to go about getting this set up right and centering the frame to the front axle. And the one set of instructions talked about taking a level and putting it on your wheel wells and measuring from each side. Or I think the one that'll get me closer is going to be finding the center of this cross member, finding the center of this axle, taking a plumb bob and hanging it, trying to align those while somebody's in the driver's seat turning the wheel, so that you can get this exactly where it needs to be adjustment wise. So I'm going to set the string up. I've measured between this cross member, that's 24 inches from frame rail to frame rail, and my point right here, 12 inches in, and then from end of the axle to end of the axle, well, inner part of the brake shield is 52 inches, so 26 in, I'm getting right about to the cover here. So what I gotta do, I hang this string and then align those, and that should be where I have to adjust my track bar, so stay tuned. Alright, we got the steering and front suspension pretty much all finished. This is just to take a quick look and go over some problem areas. I have the drag link on that has the adjustable side on the left, the passenger side for the tie rod end. I just adjusted that to the best I could. I still need to get it aligned, but then the drag link comes up, so the directions I read tells you to put your pitman arm straight back once you found the center. That's as about as straight back as I could get because I don't have the adjustable drag link, so we're going to try that. The steering stabilizer is at a weird angle, but that's because I have a drop track bar, I have the drop pitman arm, but I didn't have anything to get that to the same level, so we're going to run that for now, see how that works out. I ran out of, or at least lost a Zerk fitting for one of these ball joints, so I went to Ace, picked those up, I just greased those up, so that was pretty simple. And then the adjustable track bar in the back is pretty much adjusted the whole way closed with the jam nut there. That's as close as I could get it to lining up the middle of the cross member here to the axle itself, so we're going to try that, and then I'm going to go and get it aligned and see what my numbers are to then see what adjustments I need to make. I know that there's a pretty big camber at the top of the wheel. Wheel is slanting in at the top, so that might be the sleeve on the knuckle itself. We're gonna try this, like I said, get the numbers and go from there. But yeah, that should be it for the front steering. I'll maybe make a comment here on the steering wheel. This is a custom I Did It steering column from Wild Horses, and I did it obviously, and the column itself is a GM product. It's the same size that goes into GM cars. So if you're looking to buy a steering wheel, if you go to the interwebs and then you know what size GM column this is, you can look that way, or you can go through who I used Forever Sharp and bought a wheel and adapter kit through them. But I just put this in with the dash mounted, and I just hooked up the wires here. If you need help with wiring, take a look at my painless review or follow Nashville Early Broncos. He does a very in-depth installation of that harness. So I have the column in. I'm going to put the turn signal and put those into the column and try it out. Actually, I want to try the horn out, see if it's working right. Got the steering wheel in. So I was going to mount the tack to this, but I didn't know that I would need a aftermarket steering column mounting bracket. I got the original that clamps onto the bottom of the steering column and then has the bigger hole for the tack up top. So I had to get creative and I put it right to the roll bar. I like it so far. We'll see if I need to make any changes. But additionally, for the steering wheel went in pretty easily. I needed the special adapter, the A01 from Forever Sharp Steering, to hook up this steering wheel, and Also, the horn wasn't working. It works now, but the problem was it wasn't grounding out properly, and I had it connected straight to the column, so I couldn't understand why it wasn't grounding. Well, the column itself bolts up to the cowl. There's 2 bolts there, and then if you come down this way, there was no contact. I didn't have this telescoping steering shaft in yet, so it wasn't doing anything. As soon as I put this in, it ran fine. The horn worked. So it needed the metal in here. Now, if you have a regular steering column, regular steering column, regular steering shaft, and it has that rag joint in there, it might have a hard time grounding out. So that was the trouble I had when I got it to work. Spent way too much time on it. For the most part, though, the steering works. Power steering is finally working. I'm gonna have to run it quite a bit just to, get the micro bubbles out of it, because it seems like most of it's out, but there are some parts that seem sluggish, so I got to just keep running it and troubleshoot from there. But if you have any questions about steering or the Hydro Boost, let me know. Two last notes about the steering. First being, I had a lot of slop once I had this all together and was driving around. The wheel would move 1 inch each way, so about 2 inches total before the wheels would turn. So that was remedied by, in the back of the steering box, where the steering shaft comes in, you have to tighten the preload inside. And in order for me to do that with it still in the vehicle, I had to fabricate a little spanner wrench, which I'll pull up here in a second. And I gave that a few twists after I loosened that lock nut that's on there. And the steering was perfect at that point, response-wise. Let me go find that spanner. So here's the tool that I made. I welded in a nut, a bolt here, cut most of it off on the other side so that I had something that I could turn against, and then I took 2 long bolts, welded those on there, ground them down so that they would fit inside there to turn it as if it were a spanner wrench. It worked perfectly. I mean, it turned so smoothly, and that's just what I had to do to get the job done. But steering feels much better now. And the second note, what was the second note? Oh, the second note was I went ahead and I put in my caster correctors in the knuckle, and nice little kit. It moved them 1.5 degrees, and that goes in on the top ball joint on the knuckle, and then there's a shim that goes on the top side of that where the nut goes. That shim, I didn't put that in at first, silly mistake, and with that in there, or without it, I was getting a shake or a shimmy at about 55 miles an hour, and then as soon as I put that in there, tighten it down, that thing runs smooth. So make sure you put that in there if you go with this certain set. And here, I'll pull up the box. Specialty Products company makes it. 1.5 degree camber caster bushing. You can change camber on it with the way that you set it. If it were a clock, you have it at the 12 and 6 o'clock positions, and then for caster you put it at the 9 or 3. So not a bad little piece. I'm going to take it to get aligned by a professional, fix the toe on it, and if it's still out, then I'm going to have to look into alternative methods, which is probably going to be trying to find the old school shims that go on the spindle, and I'm not sure yet, so I got to see what they come back with. But that's what I'm working with so far, so if you have any questions, let me know.